There's a particular ache that quietly resides within those who think deeply. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand the spotlight, and it certainly doesn't beg for sympathy. It lingers, subtle, constant, like an invisible shadow resting on the edges of the soul. This isn't the kind of pain people can see. It's the weight of perceiving too much, of catching the unsaid, of sensing what others work so hard to avoid. You could be sitting at a dinner table, surrounded by the hum of light-hearted conversations, people exchanging jokes, trivial stories, and empty laughs. One person brings up the weather, another recounts a shallow headline from the day, and everyone plays along as if this is enough. And then you speak. You offer something real, something that cuts through the surface. And suddenly, the air changes. The rhythm falters. The words you've spoken don't land. They hang there unwelcome until someone coughs awkwardly and swiftly changes the subject. Anyway, they say, desperate to return to safe ground. The moment dissolves, but the sting of it lingers for you. This happens more than you would ever admit. You notice it. You feel it. Carl Jung knew this pain intimately. He understood that the deeper a person journeys into their own consciousness, the more they begin to feel like a stranger in the world around them, not because they are broken, but because the world finds comfort in its illusions. It celebrates those who stay at the surface, who follow the crowd, who keep their heads down, and who offer agreeable smiles on demand. Deep thinkers. They don't fit into this structure. They can't. They see too much. They feel beyond what is spoken. They catch the contradictions in rituals, the emptiness behind social norms, the insincerity wrapped in polite laughter. Jung once said, "The more intelligent and self-aware an individual is, the more they suffer from the collective unconsciousness." It wasn't a badge of honor, it was a caution. In a world that glorifies numbness, being truly awake is often less a gift and more a burden. This disconnect begins early. Deep thinkers, even as children, are often misread. They ask inconvenient questions. They wonder why adults wear masks, why some rules feel senseless, why love sometimes comes with unspoken conditions, and instead of receiving answers, they are silenced. Stop asking so much. Why can't you just be like everyone else? And so they retreat. Outwardly quiet, but inwardly blazing with endless questions and heavy truths. By the time they reach adulthood, they've built entire universes, inside their minds, worlds that are rich, intricate, and often too overwhelming for others to engage with. In the professional sphere, they're asked to follow scripts. In relationships, they're told they're too much. In public spaces, they're pressured to only show the pleasant, the polished, the digestible parts of themselves. And so, they pull back, not because they want to hide, but because experience has taught them what happens when they don't. Carl Jung believed that society instinctively fears what it doesn't comprehend. Deep thinkers are often misunderstood not because they are wrong, but because they expose what others are not prepared to confront. When they voice difficult truths, they're accused of overcomplicating. When they sit in reflective silence, they're seen as judgmental. When they speak about wounds and traumas, they're dismissed as too sensitive. When they ask probing questions, they're told they're overthinking. But the reality is, they're not overthinking. They're simply paying attention. They see the fractures in what society calls whole. They feel the dissonance that others rush to ignore. They point to the hidden corners people have spent lifetimes avoiding. And this makes others uncomfortable, not because deep thinkers are incorrect, but precisely because they are painfully correct. They force people to confront uncomfortable mirrors. Mirrors that reveal suppressed fears, buried grief, and uncomfortable patterns. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, and the truth is, most people would rather dismiss the mirror than face the shadow staring back at them. If you've ever tried to help someone, to offer a difficult but necessary truth, to point out the slow disaster unfolding in their life, and instead of gratitude, you were met with anger, with silence, with abandonment, you've encountered this resistance firsthand. You weren't being negative, you were being honest, but honesty isn't what most people seek. What they crave is comfort, and comfort rarely lives in the same space as truth. Jung once observed that most people don't truly think. They simply rearrange their pre-existing beliefs. They recycle inherited ideas, defend social scripts they've never questioned, and perform rather than perceive. Deep thinkers disrupt this performance. They break the cycle. They dismantle inherited illusions. But the price of seeing clearly is often social isolation. The more awake you become, the more isolated you may feel, not because you've failed to belong, but because you've outgrown the spaces where belonging is superficial. And yet, despite all this, you still crave connection. You try to soften your voice, to dim your brightness, to blend into environments that have always felt foreign to your soul. But no matter how much you bend, it never fully works. Because once you've tasted the depth of truth, you cannot return to shallow conversations. Once you've seen beyond the facade, you cannot unsee. What do you do with this? How do you navigate a world that quietly resents the very essence of who you are? Where do you find peace when the fabric of society seems woven to suffocate minds like yours? That's what we'll continue to explore. If you've ever sat in a room and wondered, why does none of this feel right to me? You are not broken. You are not out of place. You were simply born into a system that wasn't made to hold the weight of your depth. Carl Jung called this the mass-mindedness of society, a structure where independent thought is replaced by collective programming. From the moment you open your eyes to this world, you're handed a pre-written story. You're told what to chase, what to fear, what to believe, what success should look like, and what failure means. You're taught to comply, to compete, to smile through discomfort, to suppress even when you're quietly falling apart. And if you follow the script, the world rewards you. It labels you as functional, as balanced, as successful. But the moment you question it, the moment you dare to ask, why are we doing this? Who does this truly serve? You become the outlier, the problem, the inconvenient voice. You're told you're too intense, you're told you're too complicated, you're told you're too much, but you're not too much. You're awake. And the world fears those who are awake. Let's go deeper. If these words resonate with you, if you've ever felt like you're carrying a quiet weight that no one else seems to notice, leave a comment with just one word that captures how you feel right now. I read each one carefully. Stay connected, subscribe, and keep walking with us. In this space, you will never be asked to hide who you truly are. Think back to your earliest days in the school system. Were you ever celebrated for asking profound questions? Were you encouraged to explore the emotional layers beneath simple facts? Or were you rewarded for sitting still, for memorizing without questioning, for following instructions without resistance? For most deep thinkers, school is the first battlefield. It's the place where the world starts whispering, stop being so curious, stop wandering so far inside your own mind. You were asked to sit in rows, to think within borders, to speak only when prompted. You weren't taught to seek truth. You were taught to follow directions. You weren't asked to think independently. You were asked to perform obedience. The world doesn't celebrate deep thinking. It doesn't nurture it. It commodifies followers. It thrives on predictability. Deep thinkers disrupt that system. They ask why when everyone else is asking how much. They don't just accept what's given. They question where it came from, who benefits, and what's missing. Carl Jung saw this with piercing clarity. He believed that any system that discourages internal exploration is a system built on fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of depth, fear of the soul's power to transform. And this fear doesn't just live in classrooms. It spreads into the workplace, into our relationships, into our social spaces. We are taught to value efficiency over meaning, status over authenticity, appearance over depth. Look around. In the modern dating world, we reward surface-level attraction over emotional resonance. In careers, we prioritize productivity metrics over purpose. In friendships, we chase constant entertainment, avoiding the quiet spaces where real connection grows. Jung believed the soul was never meant to move at the speed of modern life. The soul needs pauses. It needs reflection. It needs shadow. But most people never stop moving long enough to ask, is this what I actually want? Or is this just what I've been told to want? Deep thinkers don't just ask that question. They feel it in their bones. And because they pause, they disrupt the rhythm others are desperately clinging to. Because they reflect, they become reminders of the very truths society is sprinting to avoid. People have been conditioned to fear silence, to escape stillness, to associate introspection with danger. So when a deep thinker enters the room, carrying stillness, not as emptiness but as presence, it unsettles the crowd. When a deep thinker's gaze lands, it doesn't just skim, it sees. And to be seen, truly seen, is terrifying for those who have spent their lives hiding from themselves. So, they pull away. They label you as distant, as strange, as too serious. Not because you are, but because your presence disturbs their carefully constructed illusion. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." You've felt that, haven't you? That ache of sitting across from someone you care about and realizing they cannot, or will not, meet you where you are. That quiet resignation when you attempt to speak of meaning, of trauma, of purpose, and the other person retreats into surface-level comfort. You know the weight of biting your tongue when you see through someone's mask, because you've learned they're not ready to hear it. You've learned that even your honesty can be received as a threat. This isn't connection. This is survival. Surviving in a world that's afraid of depth comes at a cost. Over time, you may start to question yourself. Maybe I am too much, maybe I should shrink, maybe I should just smile more and think less. But I urge you, don't do that. Please don't abandon your depth just to fit in. The moment you begin to sever pieces of yourself for the comfort of others, you don't just lose connection, you lose your soul. Carl Jung would never want that for you. He believed the greatest hope for this world is the individual brave enough to stay awake in a society addicted to sleep. The one willing to keep asking, to keep seeking, even when the silence grows louder. But let's be honest. Being a deep thinker isn't easy. It doesn't bring simplicity. It brings more questions, more weight, more solitude. You feel everything. The beauty, the brokenness, the chaos, the stillness. You cannot numb it. You cannot unsee it. And in a culture obsessed with distraction, with numbing, with constant stimulation, to feel is an act of rebellion. So rebel. If you are a deep thinker, you've probably carried this question for years. Why do I always feel so drained? Not just tired in my body, but exhausted in my soul. You step into a room and you can read the energy before anyone speaks. You hear words, but you also hear the ache hiding behind them. And by the end of that conversation, they feel lighter, but you feel heavier. And you wonder, why does everyone come to me to unpack their weight but disappear when I need someone to carry mine? Carl Jung called this unconscious projection, a subtle form of emotional vampirism. People don't do this intentionally, they're not malicious. But deep thinkers are like emotional anchors. People gravitate to them, not knowing they are using them as quiet reservoirs to pour their suppressed emotions into. It's a dangerous pattern. When you spend your life absorbing everyone else's struggles, your own voice fades. Your own needs become vague. Your own essence begins to blur. And the painful part? No one notices. Because you've been cast as the strong one, the stable one, the one who always seems to have it figured out. But the truth? You're exhausted. And this is how the world quietly drains deep thinkers. Not through aggression, but through quiet, constant, one-sided dependency. Your friendships begin to feel like rescue missions. Your conversations feel like therapy sessions where you're always the listener, never the one being heard. Your relationships tilt into imbalance where you give and receive very little in return. And when you finally step back, when you say, "I need space," when you create boundaries, they call you cold. They call you distant. They accuse you of changing. But what they don't see is that your silence isn't punishment. It's self-preservation. You're not cold. You're recharging. You're surviving in a world that keeps pulling at your energy without ever asking how much you've lost. Let's talk about the modern world's favorite weapon, distraction. You can't walk a block without being assaulted by advertisements, screaming that you are not enough. Unless you buy this, chase that, become this. The media machine thrives on your doubt. And deep thinkers, they see through it. They see the lies, the manipulation, the artificial pressures. But here's the dangerous twist. Even when you see it, even when you know it's designed to control you, it still wears you down. Because deep thinkers don't consume passively. They process, they deconstruct, they internalize. Every image, every message, every headline triggers a cascade of questions. Why is everyone pretending? Why is grief hidden? Why is vulnerability erased from our public spaces like it's something to be ashamed of? Jung believed that society is more shaped by the unconscious than by reason. And when the collective unconscious fears depth, the entire culture is built to suppress it. You're told, don't stop, don't feel, don't ask why, keep moving. But deep thinkers, they can't move blindly. They can't chase without purpose. They pause. They question. They break the rhythm, and the world punishes them for it. At school, they're called distracted. At work, they're told they're not practical enough. In relationships, they're labeled as difficult or overly emotional. But what they really are is real. And being real in a world obsessed with performance is not just rare, it's radical. But radical honesty comes with a price. You lose invitations. You lose approval. You lose the comfort of fitting into spaces where truth is unwelcome. But you gain something more valuable. You gain your soul. You begin to see that the loneliness you feel isn't because you're wrong. It's because you refuse to play a game. You never believed in. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." You are awake. And yes, the cost of awakening is often isolation. But there is hope. There are others like you, quietly observing, quietly thinking, quietly waiting for someone to say what they've been holding in their hearts for years. And when two deep thinkers meet, something beautiful happens. The illusion fractures, the silence softens, the soul breathes. So don't retreat. Don't dilute yourself to make others comfortable. There comes a time when every deep thinker asks, is it worth it? Is it worth carrying this weight? Is it worth seeing what others refuse to see? Jung believed that this isn't a dead end. It's a doorway. It's the moment you choose to conform or to expand into your truth, even if that means walking alone. The world will beg you not to. It will offer shallow comforts in exchange for your silence, but deep down you'll know that's not living. That's existing, and for someone like you, existing is not enough. If this spoke to you, I want you to comment below. One word, just one word that captures how you feel right now. Let's see if others feel the same. I read every comment carefully, because this space is ours, where you never have to apologize for who you are. Subscribe, stay close, and let's keep going deeper together. There's a quiet transaction happening around you, a subtle exchange that most people don't even notice. Deep thinkers are constantly giving, pouring, absorbing, and rarely receiving. It's not because they are asked to, it's because they are naturally wired to hold space for others. But here's the truth most people will never admit. The world doesn't just ignore deep thinkers, it consumes them. People are drawn to depth, to sincerity, to the calm presence of someone who listens without judgment. They seek out those who see beyond the surface because instinctively, they know that's where healing begins. But instead of honoring that depth, they often extract from it. They come to you for understanding. They come to you for clarity. They come to you when the weight of their own thoughts becomes unbearable, and you give, again and again. But here's the question. When was the last time someone asked you, "How are you really?" and waited, truly waited for your honest answer? You've become the place where people offload their burdens, but when you need a place to rest, you find none. Carl Jung understood this dynamic well. He warned that society unconsciously drains those who carry depth because the collective instinct is to offload pain, not process it. So people project their unresolved fears onto you. They unconsciously hand you their emotional mess and then step away feeling lighter, while you carry what they couldn't. This is why you often feel depleted, mentally and spiritually. Relationships begin to tilt. Conversations become one-directional. Friendships start to feel like quiet obligations where you listen, but you're rarely heard. And when you finally say, "I need space. I can't hold this right now," you're met with confusion, with distance, sometimes even anger. But let's be clear, your silence is not abandonment. It's survival. You are not cold. You are not selfish. You are simply learning to protect the parts of you that have been overused and undervalued. There's something you must remember. You were never meant to carry everyone. Carl Jung taught that the individual's task is not to rescue the world, it's to become whole. But the world will pull you into the role of savior if you let it. It will quietly demand that you absorb its chaos, all while offering you very little space to heal your own. This is why many deep thinkers find themselves isolated, not because they chose loneliness, but because they needed to recover from constant, emotional overexposure. Let's talk about social media, the new stage where the performance of life happens. For most people, scrolling is passive. It's a quick distraction, a way to pass time. But for you, scrolling is work. Every post triggers reflection. Every headline ignites analysis. Every image sparks 1,000 quiet questions. You see the patterns, the performative positivity, the curated perfection, the masked pain hiding behind filtered smiles. You notice how society markets happiness like it's a product, how beauty is sold as worth, how fear is packaged as protection. And even though you're aware, even though you can see through the charade, it still exhausts you, because you don't just see information. You feel it, you process it, you carry it. Even the simplest interactions are never simple to you, and the world doesn't make space for that kind of processing. It tells you to keep going, to keep scrolling, to keep performing. Carl Jung believed that culture, more than logic, is shaped by the unconscious. And right now, our collective unconscious is terrified of depth. So the systems we live in, schools, workplaces, media platforms, are built to suppress it. You're told, don't stop, don't question, don't feel, just keep moving. But deep thinkers don't move without asking where they're going. They don't chase without wondering why. They don't surrender their awareness just to fit in. And because of that, they are often penalized. In school, they're labeled as distracted. In the office, they're labeled as impractical. In relationships, they're told they're too intense. But here's the deeper truth. Being real in a performative world is revolutionary. But revolutions aren't easy. Revolutions cost. You lose invitations, you lose approval, you lose comfort, but you gain something sacred. You gain yourself. And when you find yourself, you realize that the loneliness you feel isn't because you're wrong. It's because you refuse to play a game you've always known is hollow. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." You are awake, but awakening comes with exile. Still, there is hope. There are others like you. People who have also been carrying silent weights. People who have also been waiting for someone to speak what they've been too afraid to say. And when you meet them, you'll know. You'll feel it in the way they listen, not to reply, but to understand. You'll sense it in their silence, not as disinterest, but as presence. You'll find them, but only if you stop hiding, only if you stop shrinking, only if you stop diluting your depth to make yourself easier to digest. There will come a moment when you ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth carrying what others won't? Is it worth seeing what others refuse to see? Carl Jung believed that this is not the end, it's the beginning. It's the moment where you choose to conform and abandon yourself, or to expand into your truth. Even if that path is lonelier, the world will never ask you to choose expansion. It will always offer comfort in exchange for your silence. But deep down, you know That isn't life. That's survival. And you weren't born to survive. You were born to live fully. You were born to carry a mind that cannot be tamed, a heart that refuses to go numb, a soul that will not pretend. That's not your flaw. That's your calling. Carl Jung taught that every person carries within them a sacred task, a psychological destiny, and the deeper the thinker, the more sacred the task. Not everyone is meant to dive into the self, to confront the shadow, to emerge reborn. But you are. And no, it's not a comfortable path. There's no map. There are no cheering crowds. Some days you will feel lost. Other days you will feel cursed. But listen carefully. That emptiness you sometimes feel, it's not failure. It's space. It's space for something real to grow. Because when you stop chasing what the world demands, you start becoming who you were always meant to be. You stop performing. You start becoming. You start living. If this part reached you, I want you to write a specific sentence in the comments. The world may not understand me, but I will never abandon myself. Write this sentence. Let's fill this space with people who refuse to shrink. I read every comment carefully. Subscribe and stay with us. Here you will always be understood. Here's the secret no one tells you. Deep thinkers are not here to be fully understood by the masses. They're here to awaken the few. Maybe you weren't born to fit into every room. Maybe you were born to challenge the room, to disrupt the comfort, to bring the light of truth into spaces where illusion has reigned for too long. Maybe your job isn't to be liked. Maybe your purpose is to be a mirror, a reflection of what others have been desperately avoiding. And yes, that mirror is often rejected. People will call you too serious, too sensitive, too intense, too much. But they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting the part of themselves they've been taught to hide, because when you speak the truth, when you carry depth, you trigger something they've buried. Your very presence pulls their shadow closer to the surface, and that's terrifying for those who've spent their lives performing, pretending, escaping. But you weren't made to escape. You were made to confront. You were made to see. You were made to feel. You were made to awaken. The tragedy of this world is that it often labels the most conscious as outcasts. It builds systems that reward obedience and punishes awareness. It celebrates loudness and dismisses quiet depth. It glorifies speed and mocks stillness. But Carl Jung knew, real transformation doesn't happen in noise. It happens in the quiet hours. It happens in the private wrestlings of the soul. It happens when you stop asking for permission to be yourself. When you stop waiting to be invited. When you stop shrinking to be tolerated. You don't need to beg for space in a room that was never built for someone like you. Build your own room. Create your own space. Be the safe place you've been searching for. And when you do, something incredible happens. The right people, those who've been quietly carrying the same weight, will find you. The ones who speak in metaphors. The ones who dream in symbols. The ones who ask why before they ask how much. They are out there, and they are searching for someone like you. Someone who refuses to numb. Someone who refuses to pretend. Someone who refuses to apologize for the sacred weight they carry. But they can only find you if you stop hiding. If you stop dimming your light to make others feel comfortable in their darkness. Because the world doesn't need a diluted version of you. It needs your questions. It needs your quiet rebellion. It needs your raw, unfiltered truth. Carl Jung believed that real change happens when the individual transforms themselves, not when the collective forces them into uniformity. You are that individual. You are the spark that cracks the illusion. You are the one who dares to go within and come back with light. And no, the path won't be easy. Some days you will ache for connection. Some days you will long for the simplicity of ignorance. Some days you will question why you see so much, why you feel so deeply. But I promise you, that ache you feel, it's the growing space where something sacred is unfolding. When you stop chasing the world's approval, you begin to attract what is real. When you stop molding yourself to be accepted, you begin to build what is meaningful. When you stop asking, "How do I fit in?" and start asking, "What does my soul need to breathe?" That's when you begin to live. And slowly, beautifully, the right people will begin to find you. Not because you chased them, but because you stood still in your truth and your light called them home. Let the world misunderstand you. Let them call you too much. Let them say you're intense. Let them label you as serious. Smile gently and go even deeper, because this life isn't about being easily digestible. It's about being fully alive. And when you dare to live fully, without shrinking, without pretending, you become a quiet revolution. You become the person you've always needed. You become the space others have been searching for. You become the proof that it's possible to live without losing yourself. Carl Jung believed that when we embrace our full, complex selves, we become medicine. Not flashy, not grand. Sometimes just in the way we sit with someone's silence. Sometimes just in the way we refuse to look away from hard truths. Sometimes just in the way we keep our hearts open, even when it hurts. You don't need to write a book. You don't need to lead a movement. You don't need to fix the whole world. You just need to stay awake. You just need to honor your depth. You just need to stop apologizing for who you are. That alone is a radical act. That alone is revolutionary. And when you do, the ones who need you the most, the ones who feel too much, the ones who think too deeply, the ones who've been hiding their questions for years, they will find you. And together, you will no longer be alone. If this video made you feel seen, if you've been holding this ache in silence, I want you to comment below. I will not abandon myself to be accepted by the world. Write this sentence. Let's fill this comment section with people who refuse to shrink. Subscribe and stay close, because here, you will never have to apologize for your mind, for your heart, or for your depth. And if this resonated deeply with you, consider sending a super thanks to support this space. The world often forgets deep thinkers, but here, we never will. We will keep building this quiet revolution together, silently, lovingly, relentlessly, even when no one notices.